everyone. My name is Neta Lavon, and I'm the CPO and VP R&D of Aleph Farms. Reut, the moderator of the session, has some technical issues, and I was asked to start the session. So without further ado, first of all, thank you for the kind invitation for this exciting session. I would ask my colleagues to present themselves. So please, Dorit, please present yourself and the institution that you are coming from.
Thank you. My name is Dorit Donoviel. I'm a Sabra who now lives in the United States, in Houston, Texas, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of leading a NASA-funded institute that is called the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, or TRISH for short. And we're based at Baylor College of Medicine with consortium partners Caltech and MIT. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. Please, Ralph.
Hi, my name is Ralph Fritsche, and I'm the Space Crop Production Project Manager for NASA at the Kennedy Space Center. The Kennedy Space Center is NASA's lead center for plant and crop research. So my focus is on sustainable crop production and support of exploration missions beyond low Earth orbit. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So I will present myself. My name is Neta Lavon, as I told you, and I'm coming from Aleph Farms. Throughout my career, I've been working in developing several products, biotech products from cells and stem cells, and have been specializing in commercialization of emerging technologies for industrial products, such as cell therapies. I have joined Aleph Farms back in 2017 upon the company establishment to lead the company's technological strategy. Aleph Farms grows beefsteaks from bovine cells, omitting the need to grow and slaughter cows with a significant reduced impact on the environment. One of the major challenges for humanity is to promise food security to our future generations while promising no further climate change. Cultivating beef answers this challenge and has the potential to drastically cut down on the overall environmental footprint of beef production, reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 92%, land use by 95%, and water use by 78%. Growing only the edible parts in an optimized manner allows us to perform these drastic footprint reductions. Our vision is to provide unconditional nutrition for anyone, anytime, and anywhere. And when I say anywhere, actually we mean on Earth and beyond on space. Hi, Reut.
Hi, thank you, Neta.
Okay, so I'll finish my session and then I'll hand it over for you if it's okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so as I said, our vision is to provide unconditional nutrition to anyone, anytime, anywhere, and that means on Earth and in space. We released the world's first cultivated beefsteak in 2018 on Earth, and the world's first printed cultivated meat in space in 2019 on the International Space Station together with 3D bioprinting solution. We were selected to join a Kia mission set to launch in March 2022. In this experiment, we plan to explore our unique platform to produce cultured meat under microgravity conditions. This experiment will help us to establish procedures for successful cell mass and cell growth and maturation of our bovine cells. This is the basis for fresh meat production. The production of fresh meat locally on space has no substitutes. It saves resources that are used today for shipping supply to the space and the space stations and have vast advantages such as safe and reproducible production. Moreover, astronauts will be able to customize the nutritional composition of the meat, the cooking methodologies, and the overall culinary experience around their meat. We see cultured meat being the main path for future meat production on Earth, and accordingly, the tech transfer to space environment to us at Aleph Farms is obvious. Please, Reut.
Thank you. Thank you, Neta, for that beautiful introduction on Aleph Farms and what you're trying to do. It's exactly what we're looking for in this panel about sustainability. So basically, space is all about reducing, recycling, reusing everything. So your product is absolutely up there. So the whole point of this panel is to talk about a few things that these experts know about and how we can sustain a small or even a big crew on a remote base on the moon or Mars and anywhere in between, basically around us in space. And if we can sustain a crew in that hostile environment, we can for sure use those solutions back here on Earth. Part of this panel is a very lively discussion in understanding what are the products and how they are able to us also here on planet Earth as well as on space. So we have today experts who can shed light on this very intriguing idea. So I'm Dr. Reut Sorek Abramovich. I'm from the Arava and Dead Sea Science Center under the auspices of the Ben-Gurion University. And I'm very happy to be here today together with Dr. Neta Lavon, together with Dr. Dorit Donoviel, and also with Ralph Fritsche, who is the manager of NASA space crop production. So our next introduction will come from Dr. Dorit Donoviel, who is the professor and also executive director of TRISH, which is the Translational Research Institute for Space Health at Baylor College of Medicine. So Dr. Donoviel is a big expert about space health and how to help astronauts deal with a lot of issues in space. And also she's the recipient of awards from NASA Human Research Program and was awarded the NCBRI Pioneer Award. So for instance, one of her many interesting projects is actually a database called Expand, which is the first ever human research database and repository to collect data and biospecimen from private space flights. For instance, like Inspiration 4. Inspiration 4 crew had four citizens going up to space a few months ago. One of them is a good friend of mine, Dr. Cheyenne Proctor. She was a mission mission pilot. That was her designation there. And it's absolutely essential that we have a proper database for all the different commercial and private citizen going up to space, and we can share and learn more about it. So please welcome Dr. Dorit Donoviel. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And in addition to the Inspiration 4, we also are going to be collecting data from our own A10 Stivi and the Axiom mission. So we're excited to also be collaborating with the Ramon Foundation on putting our data sets together with those that are being collected by the researchers from the Rakia mission. So thanks for having me today. So I wanted to just give you a short overview as to how keeping humans healthy is going to be reducing resources and improving sustainability in space. As you can imagine, when you get sick, you are taking up a lot of resources, including people's time and the medical care that goes into keeping you healthy or getting you back on your feet. So keeping humans healthy, whether we do it in space and on Earth, is also part of how we are living sustainably on our Earth. So indeed, I have the distinct pleasure of leading a NASA-funded institute called the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, TRISH for short, so I'll refer to it to TRISH from now on. We're based here at Baylor College of Medicine. I'm a faculty there as well. And we have consortium partners, Caltech and MIT, working with us. Our mission is to fund research, to find and fund research that can reduce the risks to humans living in space and keeping them healthy and sane over long duration missions, for example, is our job. And so while NASA is making steady progress in reducing the risks to human health and performance in space, Trish was designated to be an agile partner that can actually take a lot of risks in terms of things that we invest in order to reduce the risks. So we're taking risk to reduce risks. So what does our future look like? It's been 50 years since humans actually walked on the moon. We are going back. Thank goodness that we're finally going back. We've learned how to live in space over the last 20 years on the International Space Station. And the last panel is a real exciting panel. We had several commercial companies talking about keeping that going. But we learned a lot about how to keep humans living and developing the space economy. We're going back to this kind of landscape, and we're doing so in the next couple of years. And it's been a long while since we've been there. And we're going to do that in order to learn to go here. This is the Mars surface. This is further and further away from home. And to me, this may even be a picture of the Negev desert before the Israelis got in there. It made it look like, you know, something that is sustainable for human living. So when you think about the challenges of making an environment like this or like this sustainable for human health and human performance, then you start to think about how to do sustainability in a new way. So I want you to think about the fact that this is the surface of Mars. This could just as easily have been the surface of the moon, although it would be a different picture. And you're living on it. How do you keep yourself healthy? How do you feed yourself? We'll hear a little bit about that from Ralph on the panel. How do you make sure that if you get sick, you take care of yourself when everything and everyone that you know and you depend on is that far away? This is Earth from the surface of Mars. So it really is a forcing function for us to think about how life can continue in an extreme environment. And this environment wants to kill you. Everything around you wants to kill you. The lack of gravity is not good for our bodies. The extreme isolation is not good for our mental health. We have a closed environment where everything that we expire, the CO2, can build up and become toxic for us. The distance from Earth, if you run out of food or medical supplies, there is no resupply. You are in trouble. So we have to have a capability that can give you just in time what you need on the spot. And the radiation environment, we're not going to be able to protect you wholly unless you go burrowing deep, deep, deep underground, because the amount of shielding that we would need to protect you from cosmic ray is really quite significant. And we're not going to be able to lift that up and take it off the planet and bring it with you. So being able to be resilient to this extreme environment teaches us how to make the human more adaptable, more resilient in an extreme environment like this. So Trish is solving all those problems, but I wanted to focus on one area because this panel is really focused on sustainability. So one example of the things that we're investing in is reduce the human requirements. On that long duration mission to Mars, for example, it's going to be about a 6-month trip. Those humans are not going to need to be awake and doing a lot of things. What if we could, just like they do so in the sci-fi movies, put people into a hibernation? And I know this sounds a little bit far-fetched, but that's exactly the kind of work that NASA expects Trish to look at. And what you see here is a nice diagram that was developed by a local reporter here in Houston when we told her about the work that we're doing and we're funding, looking at certain aspects of human hibernation. And what this means is that reducing metabolism in a human in just even a small percentage. Maybe you sleep for a little bit longer. Maybe you cool down all of your metabolic waste so that you're not generating a lot of activity in the body. You're not expiring a lot of CO2. You're eating less food. You're sleeping more. And as you know, being able to reduce metabolism may actually really improve our ability for sustainability over a long duration. And so there's some really interesting studies that we just funded, including looking at what we call the human Jurassic Park. So it turns out that there was an early hominid species, a prehistoric human, that used to hibernate. So we're actually looking at that DNA from those early humans to understand what genes actually helped them to hibernate during the wintertime when they had no access to heat and food, etc. And so can we turn those genes on in such a way to help humans reduce their metabolic needs on a long duration space flight? Or the Earth applications. So these are a couple of examples where a hibernation type model might be very interesting. So I'll remind you that approximately 11, 12 years ago, a group of Chilean miners got trapped for over a month underneath the ground. And NASA was actually called in to help the rescue efforts understand how to sustain these individuals. They were in an enclosed environment, very similar to a spaceflight mission. A lot of people in there breathing a lot of CO2, expiring a lot of CO2, breathing up a lot of oxygen and running out of resources. Food and keeping them healthy was a major challenge. And so the same kinds of solutions that we're developing for a long duration space mission are absolutely applicable for people who are in situations such as this. So reducing these individuals' metabolism might have even solved this problem. There are also medical situations in which hyperthermia is induced, a cooling of the body when you have major heart surgery, or you even have brain injury. Cooling things down with the body slows down cellular metabolism, reduces the amount of waste that is put out, and actually cools things down in such a way that you avoid a lot of damage to healthy tissues. And so there's a lot of applications for the work that we're doing in space and health and for Earth applications. So I hope that you understand from what I was talking about and some of the examples I gave, that learning how to live sustainably in space and keeping humans healthy really helps us to conserve resources on Earth. And I look forward to our discussion in a little bit. This is how you can connect with us. Feel free to send me an email, and my email address will be provided in the chat. Thanks very much.
One moment. Thank you so much, Dorit. That was really, really interesting, especially the hibernation thing that you found in the genes. I would love to go back and read a bit more about it, being a geneticist. So thank you very much. We're moving forward to our next interesting guest, Ralph Fritsche, manager of the Space Corps production at NASA and leading an effort to develop sustainable and reliable fresh food system in support of long-duration space mission. So as well, he has received several awards from NASA as our distinguished other guest. It's very impressive. And I would like to call Ralph on board and also ask him a bit, just to tell me, because Israel is really big about like algae farms. We have a lot of small companies who do a lot of interesting things with different types of algae. And I myself am involved with Bar Ilan Biotech Center to do stuff with algae and extremophiles, and to take care of hydrogen, for instance, which is also a space fuel. So I'm interested, Ralph, after your introduction, if you can say something about algae, and if you have encountered algae as part of, the production process, maybe someone needs in a moon base or anything like that. So Ralph, please.
Thank you, Reut. Yeah, so my name is Ralph Ritchie, as I said in the intro, and I was very pleased with that. I'd like to tell you a little bit. Dorit mentioned a little bit about what Trish is doing in a general sense. So it encompasses a lot of things related to crew health and performance. From my perspective, I work very closely with the food system folks at Johnson. I'm also the HRP center rep, so I kind of dovetail in with the work that Dorit's doing, but it's focused and targeted predominantly on crop production as an adjunct to the prepackaged food system. So I think most people are aware that for the history of the manned space program, the astronauts have always been shipped up food from the ground. And that's been basic caloric nutrition, as well as the vitamins and nutrients they need. They also get fresh fruits and vegetables on resupply missions, and they get some crew preference items. So when we start talking now about exploration missions beyond low Earth orbit, a lot of that tends to get mitigated. We are no longer going to be having crew preference items, because when these foods are packaged, the crews may not be determined yet, especially if we have to pre-position this food. When we talk about fresh fruit and vegetables on resupply missions, when crews head for a mission to Mars, there will be no resupply along the way. So basically, they get to take with them the prepackaged food that they're allotted, and that is going to degrade over time. Right now, the efficacy of the nutrients in the prepackaged food, some of them start to begin to degrade after about 1.5 years. And if I'm looking at a 3-year mission to Mars, that's not going to give them the supplementation that they need, especially on the return journey when they've been gone from Earth for so long. So that's where we're looking at alternatives that can be produced on the missions that can help supply some of that nutritional deficit and make up for it. And so we look at crops as being the most, I would say, the area where we have the most experience with, that would appear to be the easiest technology, and where we've got lots of experience on terrestrially with farming that's been going on for thousands of years, but even more recently with the controlled environment agriculture, where there's a big synergy between what's being done in controlled environment agriculture as to what we're trying to do in space. Controlled environment agriculture tries to feed a lot more people. You'll see these greenhouse farms that are all indoors with LED lighting, controlled environments. So we adapt a lot of those technologies, but we do it on a much smaller scale since space is very expensive, and it is one of the key resources we have when we're actually traveling on a mission. So there's a lot of effort being put now to see how can I use plants and crops and potentially supplement the diet of crews to keep them healthy, because ultimately food and nutrition is the first line of health for human performance, and so that's the important part. Initially, for early missions, it'll all be about supplementing that diet. We're still going to be depending on the prepackaged food for all the calories. We're going to be bringing additional flavors with the types of crops that we do. We'll have textures, so there'll be a psychosocial benefit as well as key targeted vitamins that we're going to be looking to maintain. Longer term, we'll be looking then at trying to really get into Earth independence. We'll be starting once we get on the surface of the Moon and Mars for extended periods of time, and we have crew sizes that warrant it. We'll be looking at growing plants that actually can reduce some of the logistical supply mass that we have to send from Earth. So we'll be looking at caloric replacement as well. But I think it's important for us to not only focus, and there's a lot of attention on those long-term goals where you'll see advanced habitats on the surface of Moon or Mars, but it's going to be a while before we get there. So we can't just focus on the end and not realize that there's stepping stones along the way. If I look at where we are right now, we have challenges, and I think Dorit mentioned some of them that just relate to the plants as well as to the humans, and that's the radiation environment. Just trying to water plants in a microgravity environment is challenging. So we currently have two different types of growth systems on the International Space Station now. One of them is called Veggie. We have two of those units, and another is called the Advanced Plant Habitat, and that's where we do our early crop fundamental research as well as our early crop research. So we do target fundamental science as well as crop production, because we need to know some of the basics before we actually apply them to crops. But we have been growing plants now that have been consumed by astronauts, a variety of lettuce, cabbage. We recently grew peppers on the Advanced Plant Habitat. And so one of the cautionary tales I have is people will see a lot of these successes and think that growing plants in space is easy. And that's far from the case. It's a constant struggle, not only, as I said, with managing water delivery to the root zone in microgravity, but the hardware systems that we've designed and developed have been tailored towards the kind of operations where if something fails, I can send up a whole module or replacement unit. And so they've not been designed sustainably. They are consistent with how we do things on the International Space Station, but not with the mindset that says I'm taking these systems to Mars. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to develop systems that really are sustainable. And that's another important point I think to note, is that when I talk about sustainability, it's not only living off the land, growing plants, growing crops, growing other sources of food that can feed astronauts. It's also, how do I maintain this hardware in such a way that I can repair it? I don't have to just simply, throw something away because the system no longer works. I have to go and try to make these systems repairable and really use minimal resources in my supply chain, because ultimately everything that I need to manage and operate a system for a 3-year mission, I have to bring with me. So they've got to be sustainable from that perspective as well. And I think this is all the stepping stone path that leads us to when eventually I can start having systems like this, habitats, growth facilities on the surface of the Moon and Mars that can actually do more feeding astronauts. But that's going to be a way in the future yet. As much as I wish that would be something we would see in the next 20 years, that's not necessarily going to be the case. It's going to take a while before we get there, unfortunately. And part of that's just a simple cost trade. If I have a prepackaged food that'll last 1.5 years, and my crewed missions to the surface of the Moon, for example, are only 30 to 60 days, it would be a hard sell for me to convince our management teams that I should send up a system that requires crew work to support it, requires maintenance, and it takes the same amount of volume as maybe prepackaged food for a crew of 4 for a couple of years, and I'm only getting partial calories from it. I'm not getting the full diet. So realistically, we're going to have to be looking at cases where crew sizes are going to increase, or our stays are going to be longer, or we're getting so far from home that the trade-off is better than sending the prepackaged food. So basically, my job is trying to resolve all of this, come up with ways of designing systems that we can deploy at the right time on the right vehicles that meet those mission requirements, as well as answering all the challenges with growing plants in space.
Okay, Ralph, so I understood you have a very simple mission. Thank you very much. That was super easy. You have absolutely no work to do anymore.
No
That's
problems.
great. Great. I love to hear these simple, straightforward stories about. So what I realized once you were explaining, and thank you very much for this clear explanation and really a wealth of information, is that when someone from NASA goes and design crops or a food solution, they go for a very, very specific mission that can be deployed in different areas. It has to be a very specific, like, cubicle that goes exactly to where it needs to be. And from that perspective, it's not sustainable. It's not reusable in any other setup. You really have to do a lot of work to make it a bit more open. So thank you very much. I have a quick question for all our panelists, just a short break. Everybody, I talked with you before about this really simple question, so you're all aware of it, but please, Neta, if you could go to space with a pet, which pet would you choose?
Okay. I did a small survey with the employees of Aleph around me, and cat was selected as the favorite pet for the team. But actually, as Alfred said, it would be challenging, or would take a lot of time to allow this cat in space. And I think that Aleph Farms meat, in a way, brings some of the comfort that pets can bring to the astronauts. I think that maybe for the shorter duration, having the prepackaged food is something that the travelers can bear, but for very long missions, the mental health is very important, and the way that we can really provide them with fresh food, with the experience of feasts that are always around food and especially meat. This is something that would help them to cope with this long distance from the families or having so far. So it's really solving some of the mental health and maybe some of their free time out of routine. They can be integrated, if they like, to take part in this automated system that are fully controlled and optimized to take a small part in this production, so they can have a feeling that they made dinner for the family after for taking this part as being part of the community. But really, that's far. I wanted to add that I would be happy to use some of Ralph's leftovers and biological materials in our system as the feel of our cells. And I believe that, this integration of systems together one day can promote also production of meat and really supplying these advantages of the unique amino acids that are coming only from animal cells, like the methionine or tryptophan or leucine or other, and some ingredients that can come from animal cells that we grow and fed by some of the nutrients coming from plants.
Thank you, Neta. Thank you. That's very, very nice, and it's a good idea. So, Dorit, do you have a preferred pet you would like to go with you on, like another SpaceX or Axiom?
Okay, so I love animals.
Right.
Can you hear me? I love animals. I have 2 dogs that I adore. Now that my kids are grown up and out of the house, these dogs are my children. But having said that, the answer is I would not take a live pet. I would take probably a little robot that could be a pet. And I'll tell you why. I've spoken to too many astronauts who have told me about how disgusting it is to think about their crewmates' left skin cells or shavings or bits of hair that are floating all over in zero G into their eyes.
To clean the filters.
I tell you, yeah. I mean, I'm scraping my couch all the time from the dog hair. The last thing I want to do is have my animal's hair floating around. So as much as
Okay.
I love them, my space mission is going to be robotic pet.
Okay, we'll work on that. Ralph, do you have any choice in this matter? Any specifics?
Yeah, so I'm with Dorit in a way in that I have dogs, and I would not think of taking them because it would probably do more harm for their psychological benefit than it would do for mine. So that would probably have me default to, and I wouldn't have said this maybe 10 years ago, but to having a plant there that I liked. I will tell you that I do hear that the concept of taking something like that, or actually even growing a plant as something to tend and take care of, it's a double-edged sword in that while it might provide you benefit while that plant or pet is doing well, if something happens to it, psychologically, the negative impact that you're going to be experiencing because of some issue with the pet is going to have the exact opposite effect. So I would be very careful and try not to think so much about myself and more about the animal that I was thinking about taking with me.
Thank you very much, everybody, for taking good care of their pets. For me personally, I've been speaking to explorers from the Australian Antarctic Survey and from the British Antarctic Survey, and the very veterans of them used to have dogs. And in an isolated situation where the human crew is in really tough condition, a dog has a really positive impact. Even if he dies or if he's in bad shape, something happens to them, I think the impact would be great. And I think if we can make space good for our pets, then it's for sure is going to be good for us. It's sort of like a really quality sign. So moving forward with the rest of the questions of this panel, because this was a bit of a sidetrack I wanted to do, but I would like to talk first to Dorit and ask her, is there like a specific pain or need that haunts you in your specific area that causes major delay for you to find solution to sustainability in supporting human health, for instance, in space? Is there anything specific that really haunts you? Thank you.
Yes, thanks for that question. So absolutely, food is number one. Food is it. We haven't figured it out, as Ralph said. There's concerns around certain vitamins and nutrients that are not shelf stable for the duration that we're thinking about for long duration. For a Mars mission, we're not going to be able to bring all the food with us on the small vehicle that will go. So we'll have to pre-populate the Mars surface with foods. And so that means that's a couple of years on the Mars surface. We have to put it there. And then while the crew shows up and they live there for a while, we're talking 3 to 5 years that we need this food to be sustainable. Now, as Ralph said, it would be lovely to grow plants, but there's a lot of engineering challenges in maintaining the plants. And if they fail, then it's difficult to think about a backup system. So the food situation is not solved. And so when people ask me about behavioral health and medical, everything will be solved a lot more if the food is good. Because as you know, if you have good nutrition, your psychological well-being is good, your medical, your healthcare is good. So to me, the food is the number one thing. And if you talk to most astronauts, they will tell you food is number one. And right now, we haven't figured it out yet. As Ralph said, we're resupplying all the time. So moving towards a future where humanity can figure out the food system like Neta is doing in terms of giving you the experience without having to have a whole cow or, being able to give you the experience of having a meat that you could grow, that is key. Some more like that. And then also stability of nutrients, stability of vitamins. That is something that we still haven't figured out.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful answer. Thank you very much. I have time for one more question, sort of like a directed question, and then I think we'll take questions from the crowd, so from the audiences. That would be lovely. So for Ralph, I wanted to know if so actually. We know, is there any of your solutions that actually can be employed on planet Earth, or is the delta is really, really big in your opinion? Or is it just a matter of, 3 months, 4 months of a development cycle and sort of have this opportunity for people to have their own growing vegetables with reduced water and reduced nutrients and so on and so forth? What do you think?
So I think that it's actually something that's taking place both ways. It's a two-way process. To give an example, we have had a researcher down in the Antarctic in the DLR, the German Space Agency. They have a
Eden.
Neumeier station down there, and so Eden ISS is down
Yeah.
there, and that's and
It's a
so we
great project.
basically have one of our researchers has been down there for over a year now. So when you think about all the boxes that Dorit put about isolation, hazardous environment, all the different aspects of space travel to a mission to Mars, she's getting a lot of experience, and she's working in a greenhouse facility where she's growing plants. We're learning about where systems failures are. And so these concepts work well both for controlled environment agriculture applications as well for space applications. You know, we have so much in common that we kind of help each other out. When I look at LED lighting, the first LED lighting application towards plant growth was done by NASA, and it's been adopted by the CEA community. Similarly, there's technologies and techniques with advanced plant imaging, hyperspectral imaging to get early indication of plant health and stress that we are adopting in space flight. So I think you're going to see, yes, that these two are going to move hand in hand. The NASA requirements will probably be a little bit more targeted, maybe require a little higher aspect of technology, but we're going to learn a lot about reliability from the controlled environment agriculture world. So I don't know that it's one or the other or us feeding them. I think it's going both ways. And depending on what year it is, sometimes the travel is more towards the CEA with lessons learned from NASA, and sometimes it's the other way around where we're learning more from them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we have a few questions from the audiences. I'd like to read them now, if you don't mind. One moment, please. Thank you. So our first question, I don't know who it is. It says, great conference and session. Thank you. From a food security standpoint, what are your views on extending food functionality beyond the nutritional space, such as bioengineering food with medicinal production capabilities like biomanufacturing and so on, to streamline processes and resources? Neta, if you can shed some light on that, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's a great question. I think that the advantage of cultivated meat is that we really develop a platform already to fit all the different requirements and constraints that are on Earth to solve the conventional meat production that is already in line with the requirements of space and limited resources. So I would say that in terms of land use, in terms of water use, in terms of sources of amino acids, we already take into considerations this limitation in our food production. The fact that we only produce the edible part of the meat is really contributing to this efficiency of the system. We grow directly the steak that we would like to eat, no bones, no hair, no anything around this, which makes it much more sustainable. And of course, we implement inside some ingredients that would be part of the meat actually while growing from the outside, or some genes that express these nutrients as part of the growth that we can add, coming from any other species, not only from cows. The fact that we have stem cells that have this unique ability to proliferate in unlimited fashion and can be stored in frozen conditions is really helping us to solve this issue, and really sending one cryovial can really allow us to produce many, many batches of meat from this one single 1 milliliter cryovial with cells. I hope I answered. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Neta. I hope you can hear me. I have some issues sometimes with my electricity at my neighborhood at the moment, and that affects my connections and so on and so forth. Nobody needs to know that, but that happens from time to time here. So going forward, I have one more question, and we have the best experts in the world, the best expert here to have it, and it's a popular question. And the question is, which plants you can grow in space, which vegetables you can grow in space. So I'm pretty sure Ralph knows the list like on the top of his head. So if Ralph, you can just say a few vegetables that can grow in space at the moment and do a good job, we will be very pleased.
Okay, so let me answer that by saying that with the facilities we have now, we focus primarily on pick and eat, solely on pick and eat type vegetables. So things that require minimal processing or preparation, just because we don't have the resources and facilities on the space station to do that. So if I think in that context, there's several different types of lettuce we've grown. There's been bok choy, there's been cabbage, like we said, the fruiting crops, peppers. I don't think that we're necessarily going to be limited on the types and variety. It'll basically be the space and volume that these things take to grow in. And so that being a real challenge right now, we're targeting and looking at microgreens. So we know that microgreens require very little in the way of water. They have a lot of nutrition densely in them, and you can grow a lot of microgreens in a small space and in a fraction of the time to growing a plant to full maturity. So in 10 days, we can get a nice variety of microgreens. So I think that's the way we've been going now, but I know there's historically been an interest in sweet potatoes from the movie The Martian. I don't know that there's really a limit. Some will do better than others, given the specific environmental constraints. But then we would potentially breed different plants to be able to tolerate those environments. So I don't know that we've factored anything out at this point. We're just limited in what we can do with the facilities we have right now.
I would like to thank very much my colleagues here, Dr. Dorit, Donoviel, Dr. Neta, Lavon, and Ralph for all your beautiful answers. I had a great time. I can have a long discussions with each of you, and I might just do it via email. So thank you very much and have a good day. See ya.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.